This is All India Radio. In Spotlight now, we bring you a discussion on assembly elections and political situations in poll-bound states. The participants are Ashok Tandon, political analyst, and Ruchika Chitravanshi, journalist.
Elections are always an exciting time, and today the assembly election dates have been announced by the Election Commission of India for Assam, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal and Puducherry. Ashok Tandanji, can you take us through what are the big announcements that have been made regarding these assembly polls by the Election Commission today?
Before the decisions were announced today, the Election Commission held a meeting yesterday, a very detailed meeting in which they discussed the security deployment requirements, social distancing norms, and details about the polling infrastructure in the poll-bound states. And today when the Chief Election Commissioner, Mr. Sunil Arora, made the announcements, the very outset he paid tributes to the corona warriors, and he said that pandemic had thrown up a dilemma, rather a challenge before the election bodies across the democracies in the world, how to manage the democratic rights of people alongside taking care of their health. So in that context, Mr. Sunil Arora cited the example of the elections in Bihar, which he said were a litmus test for the Election Commission, but thankfully the electorate of the state, they repose faith in us, and when they are now going ahead with the elections in our states, and in fact there has been a lot of improvement in the situation also, and therefore they are on a very, very positive note. And the environment, in fact he also said that the COVID vaccine drive which is underway in India in a big way has also contributed to positive whole environment. And then he went on to announce the election schedule. And in the beginning, he said the model code of conduct comes into force with immediate effect. And that is a very significant announcement, and it means that no new government policies can be announced either by the state government in the poll-bound states as well as by the central government in respect of the poll-bound states. And that is the significance of the model code of conduct. And then he also emphasized, because the excitement is always about the dates, but before announcing the dates, and the Chief Election Commissioner also said that they will be sending special general expenditure and poll observers to 5 assemblies. And he in fact said that Tamil Nadu is a very heavy spending state, and therefore the expenditure observers will be monitoring the situation, and then police observers will also be monitoring the law and order situation, and accordingly things will be done, and adequate police forces deployment shall ensure during the election. That was the promise which the Chief Election Commissioner made to the people in the whole ground state. And he said sufficient central armed forces will also be called, and all critical vulnerable voting booths have already been identified. And he in fact didn't name any state, but postal ballot permits will be available for sick, essential services employees and senior citizens also. And in that context, he said that polling time has also been increased by 1 hour uniformly in all the poll-bound states to make sure that people can cast their votes while maintaining social distancing at the polling station. So for the election campaigning, it says that road shows have been permitted in the poll-bound states for political parties to do that, but there is a condition that during the canvassing by parties, the convoys will have to be broken after every 5 vehicles. Of course, the final decision has been rest with the local election commission officers, and in that context, he said that the total number of electorate this time in these states is going to be 86 crore, and 830 assembly seats are there, and 2.7 lakh polling booths. They will elect 824 candidates, and the number of polling booths has also been increased like they did in Bihar, because they have reduced the number of the electorate on each polling booth to 1,000. After making all these announcements and paying tribute to the corona warriors,
of course, you're right that more than the dates, it's very important the timing at which these elections are happening. After Bihar, this will be the first major set of elections that are happening in the country in the middle of a pandemic. Clearly, Kananji, you said that Election Commission is concerned about coronavirus, especially Kerala, which is constantly been named as one of the states where the cases have been increasing contrary to the national trajectory. It is one of those states. So how are we going to see the polling taking place in Kerala? The government of Kerala as well, the state government has come up with guidelines, as you mentioned, about door-to-door campaigning and the whole convoy routes that are there. So can you tell us what the Election Commission has said specifically about Kerala?
The Chief Election Commissioner said that before announcing the dates in these states, they had a detailed discussion, meetings with the Health Ministry, Health Secretary, state health officials, and also other state departments who will be conducting the poll. But the whole country knows that Kerala is one of the very few states in India which has 100% literacy. People are very enlightened, and therefore, even though, unfortunately, the number of cases in Kerala have increased again, but by and large, if you look at it, people in Kerala have been maintaining the social distancing norms and other requirements as well. And in that context, I think the reason why the Chief Election Commissioner has announced a single-phase polling in Kerala on April 6th, so that goes on to show that they have full confidence in the people of Kerala as well as the state machinery also, and hopefully even during the number of cases going up, the polling in Kerala would be very high as it has always been, because the people are very enlightened electorate, 100% literacy, and of course social distancing norm will be maintained.
The Election Commission has also said that the polling time has been increased by an hour, and postal ballot has also been extended to the people above the age of 80. Tanuji, how unusual are these methods that are being pushed by EC now? Is it because of the pandemic, and have you seen more use of such steps in elections before?
No, as we've already discussed, the Bihar election was a litmus test. There is no doubt about it, and the pandemic was on its high alert even at that time. But the Indian Election Commission decided to go ahead with that, and so therefore, it is always a very encouraging sign. And therefore, now since the situation has improved considerably, and that's why they have decided to go ahead with the poll. But I think one major consideration for deciding phases has always been law and order situation. Kerala, by and large, has been a very peaceful state. Tamil Nadu, of course, has always been a very peaceful state. So therefore, even in Tamil Nadu, it's going to be a single-phase poll on April 6th. And two by-elections, Kanyakumari Lok Sabha in Tamil Nadu and Malappuram Lok Sabha by-election in Kerala also polling will be held on 6th of April. And also Puducherry. Puducherry has a small assembly of 30 seats only, but that also will be going to poll on April 6th. So that goes on to show that the two southern states and one southern union territory, the polling will be over on one day, that is April 6th. And then if we talk about two other very significant states like Assam and West Bengal, obviously because of the critical situation, very sensitive areas in Assam, the polling has been scheduled for in 3 phases. And we know that West Bengal is very sensitive. Law and order situation is also a big issue in West Bengal. And therefore, the number of phases this time have been increased from last time 7 to 8 phases this time. And before we forget, counting for all these elections would be on May 2nd. So West Bengal election would be quite stretched as far as campaigning is concerned. But replying to questions, the Chief Election Commissioner said that this is because of the movement and deployment of security forces from one area to another, and therefore the West Bengal election would be held in 8 phases. And that is the position right now. And as we know that the election results, particularly in the two southern states, are very important because of the political situation there. West Bengal is a very, very challenging state, and we all know a very intense campaigning is already going on as far as West Bengal is concerned. And let's not forget, West Bengal has 294 seats, and Tamil Nadu has 234 seats, Kerala 140, and Assam 126. Of course, as we said, Puducherry has only 30 seats. And in that context, the election is going to be very, very significant. And as we all know, India is the largest democracy, a vibrant democracy with a free press. The whole world, and particularly the developing countries, wherever there are democracies, they always look towards India as role model. And the conducting of peaceful, fair election has always been the hallmark of Indian Election Commission, and Indian Election Commission deserves all praise because it has come for praise from many countries, particularly developing countries, and there have been requests to our Election Commission to come and help hold elections in their countries also. So let's hope this time also there is no violence, peaceful elections in West Bengal, Assam, Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Puducherry.
As you said, there are security concerns in states like West Bengal, and obviously COVID is a big concern. Can you tell us a little bit about the political significance of assembly elections in these states?
A very significant thing about the election in Tamil Nadu is that it is by and large a two-front state, one led by DMK and the other is led by AIADMK. And the national parties like the BJP and the Congress are junior partners in the respective camps. And that is a very significant thing, that the domination is of the regional parties. Now, since AIADMK is in power, obviously DMK-led alliance would try to oust them, and therefore a very intense campaigning is already going on. But the national parties certainly have a limited role. BJP would certainly try to get a foothold, of course, in alliance with the AIADMK, and Congress has always been in alliance with DMK as far as the alliance partner is concerned. But in Kerala, there is a very significant development that the metro man, Sridharan, is joining BJP, and BJP is, hoping that with the induction of Sridharan, who is an international figure, perhaps they could get a better foothold in Kerala. In Kerala is between UDF and LDF, where the one LDF is dominated and led by the left party CPM, and the UDF is led by Congress. And coming to the interesting part in Puducherry is that recently there was a large-scale defections and the government had to resign. Mr. Narayanaswamy government has gone, and now the BJP is trying to make a huge pitch for Puducherry elections in the Union Territory. Coming to West Bengal. West Bengal has been ruled by the left front for so many years, and Mamata Banerjee, who was earlier with the Congress, floated her own party, Trinamool Congress, and ousted the left front. And now, when the left front is trying to, regain foothold in that state, of course, the Congress party also is a very interesting thing, is joining hands with the left front in the West Bengal, whereas it has been fighting the left front in Kerala. And the BJP has made a huge pitch for ousting the Trinamool Congress from power. So really, the election result to be watched would be certainly in West Bengal. In Assam, of course, the BJP is in power, and its alliance partners are trying to retain power in Assam, whereas the Congress, which has been in power for a long time in Assam, will try to oust BJP and get back power from them. All these things are very interesting.
A lot of challenges in this elections, as you've pointed out, and a lot of interesting developments as well. Obviously, there are so many guidelines with respect to campaigning that have been put in place, because there will be a lot of movement of crowds that will happen during the campaigning. What about voting? Will there be some sort of a protocol laid for voting as well? Because a lot of our listeners would be interested in how they are going to vote in the middle of a pandemic.
No, as I said, the Bihar election set ball rolling. People in Bihar came out in huge number, particularly women and the first-time voters. And now, of course, things are better, much better. So therefore, we do expect that the electorate will come out in large number. And particularly women folk we have seen, now they are coming out in large number, and the first-time voters as well. So I don't have any reason to believe that the poll percentage will go down. I do hope it will be as high as it has been in the previous election, irrespective of the fact that still Corona is around and people will have to be very careful as the Election Commission guidelines are. And one thing very significant, the Election Commissioner said that all the polling booths will be at the ground floor level, and there would be a distance maintained between one polling booth and another. So with all the precautions in place, and we do hope that these states are now in the election mode, and very soon we will see campaigning picking up, and we'll have to wait for May 2nd when the results are announced.
And hopefully by then a lot of people would have got the vaccine as well, which is another big campaign that the government is running alongside. Thank you so much, Mr. Tandon, for joining us today and for the very interesting insights that you've shared with us.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on assembly elections and political situations in poll-bound states. The participants were Ashok Tandon, political analyst, and Ruchika Chitravanshi, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio.